Hi everyone. We are so excited today to have with us Kathleen Booyse. She's from Aligned Living and she is a yoga teacher, a woman's mentor, and she deals with healing, alignment, self-worth, mentorship, survival to self-trust. There's so many things that we want to speak about here, so many subjects that are close to our heart, but we're going to hand over to her straight away to get a bit more of an introduction from her.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Kath, and thanks so much for having me here. I was very excited when I got the invitation. I love to speak, I love to share, and to, connect with other women like yourself who, is passionate about this work. And so I'm Kathleen Booyse, born and bred in South Africa. I live in a little town called Barrydale, which is about 3 hours out of Cape Town. My yoga journey started over 10 years ago when I was diagnosed with bipolar, and that's kind of what kicked off my wellness journey. So I did my 200-hour, 300-hour at a school called the Charlotte, Cape Town Yoga School. I then ended up being there for 5 years, managing the space and really just diving in for those 5 years while I was there doing every workshop, every class, everything that I possibly could, which only took my love for these practices deeper. And then I guess, as for most of us, 2020 came along and everything went online. And so I found myself having to teach online classes, which then led to having online recordings, which then led to having the online community that 5 years down the line I'm holding space for now and love dearly. So Aligned Living was born in that way. And now I focus mainly on the Aligned Living membership, which is my group membership, and my one-on-one coaching, the path to alignment, as well as my women's silent retreats.
That is amazing. I've actually had a look through all of your offerings and they're very holistic. They're very sort of like from A to Z. What led you to become an aligned life creator? How did you get into this, sort of besides COVID?
For me, it was really a mental health thing. I was in production. I was working, I don't know, like stupid 16-hour days, sometimes 18-hour days. Excuse me, I just had a run before this and now all of a sudden I'm coughing. And I found myself at the place where I was waking up at 4 a.m. with a Red Bull and a cigarette and a coffee, and that was just how I was spinning through all my days in production, and having severe anxiety attacks, panic attacks, and then realizing that something needed to change. And at that point, my mom actually asked me, because I said to her, I want to leave production, but I don't know what to do. And she said to me, well, what do you enjoy doing? Like, when are you happy? And I was like, well, honestly, when I get to go to yoga, like once a week or twice a week or whatever it was at that point. And she said, well, why don't you become a yoga teacher? And I don't think if she'd ever really asked that question, I would have done it, or it would have taken a much longer time for me to come to that realization. And so, I kicked off my journey doing my yoga teacher training, and that really just opened up my eyes to so many things I didn't know, which when you learn it, you're like, this is so obvious and we should all be learning this at a much younger age. But really allowing me to dive deeper into, you speak about the, like the holistic wellness is, what does it mean to be holistically well? What does it mean to be well? I think I was finding that even though I was perhaps, doing yoga or drinking the green juice or whatever it is that you're doing, if you're still in a really toxic environment, the two can't really balance each other out. And so you really need to look at the whole picture. And then building the online business, I had the name Aligned Living just kind of drop in like a download. And I was just like, I think this suits it perfectly, because my own journey really has been one of trying to live more aligned with who I really am and what is really good for me.
Yes, and you're so right. I think everyone should kind of get those lessons much younger, because it takes so long to kind of get to that point when you could have had all of that at your disposal from earlier. So why is holistic health and wellness so much more beneficial?
Sure, that's quite a loaded question, but I think
It is.
for me, it's, like that we are not just bodies. We are emotional, energetic, spiritual beings. And we can't just focus on the one layer of self, because everything is intertwined and everything connects and everything affects the other part. So, one of my big learnings was diving in deeper into the senses. Our sense, obviously we've got our taste, sight, touch, smell, etc., but like the sense of interoception, which allows us to feel internally. So this is both responsible for things like needing to go to the bathroom or feeling hungry or whatever it is, but also in tune with our emotions. So for instance, when you're sad and you're feeling an emotion like sadness and like tears fall out of your eyes, or you see something beautiful and you feel the beauty of it and like the hair stands up on your skin. It's just so evident, how we're connected on those different layers and levels. And I think for me, what was really eye-opening in the beginning of my journey was to realize that if my mental state and my emotional state is causing so much disruption in my body, then perhaps, by healing the body, I can heal those things. And by healing those things, I can heal the body. And it really works in this interlinked way. And so looking at all the levels of self and knowing that self-care really is, self-care we often see as like a bubble bath or like long walks on the beaches. And like, that's all really great. And it's wonderful if you can have that. But that's also, a really privileged perspective of what self-care is. And sometimes self-care really actually just is 10 minutes alone, or taking a few deep breaths, or things like putting up boundaries, or knowing who's taking from your energy and where you're giving your energy to. So yeah, I hope that answers the question.
No, it does. It does. Absolutely. So leading on from that, how does empowering yourself to align mind, body, and spirit lead to a more vibrant and fulfilling life, in your opinion?
I think we feel most empowered when we're most in our truth and when we're most aligned. And I think that we always know when it's not. Even if we don't want to hear that little voice, even if we don't want to listen to it, like we actually always know. And that's something that my dad actually taught me from a very young age, which only at a much later age did I understand what he was saying. Because he was always like, there will always be a right and there will always be a wrong, and you will always know the difference. And I guess when you're growing up, you also, testing the boundaries and
absolutely,
and maybe not listening to that little voice. But I think that the empowerment comes in when life starts to feel more like a flow than a struggle. And for that, there has to be a certain level of attunement when it comes to us being the observers of our own life, of what are we thinking, what are we saying, how are we reacting or responding, what are the choices and decisions that we're making. And we can really only notice those when we're able to slow down and become still enough and give ourselves some space. Otherwise, we just continue to work on autopilot. Most of us are on autopilot. Everyone knows the example of you driving your car and suddenly you've driven from point A to point B and you really don't know how you got there. Or you leave your house and you're like, I'm not sure if I locked the door. And so those are quite tangible examples. But if we go deeper into the self, how much of ourself are we not noticing? How much of ourself are we forgetting? How much of ourself are we not paying attention to? And when we're not paying attention to and recognizing our own needs, it leads to disempowerment because it leads to disconnection from the self.
Absolutely. Let's chat about the power of community. You spoke about it earlier during your introduction. How vital is this pillar in the overall strategy of wellness?
Yeah, so community, I feel, is at the heart of everything I do. When I left high school, and I have a twin sister, by the way, identical twin sister. So I've always had a girl with me, like my whole entire life. It's very interesting how my life has maneuvered through. But I remember kind of thinking about varsity and potentially thinking about going to Rays and all of that. And I said to my mom, if you put me in a building with 100 other chicks, I would literally rather like post myself to the moon. Like that sounds like my worst freaking nightmare. And now I'm like, can we buy a piece of land where like 100 women can go and live and we'll all just like live together?
It's so funny.
Like, so for me, it's really, I think, it's not necessarily an individual issue. I think there's like there's a societal issue. There's a lot of pressures. Women are pinned against each other
Yes,
since a very, very young
absolutely.
age. And that really carries through, like subtle things of jealousy or envy or judgment and all those kinds of things. And ultimately, a lot of that is around, feeling safe with someone else and feeling safe to be vulnerable and to share and to not think that I'm the only one going through this. Like there must be something wrong with me or people are going to judge me. And so I think that the healing journey can be extremely isolating. I find that with a lot of my clients, and I felt like that myself. I felt like that yesterday. I was like, no one knows what I'm going through. And then you step into an online circle. For instance, we're running an online circle on Thursday night. You step into a space, like even like an online circle, and you listen to other women speak, and you're like, oh, I'm not alone. Like I'm not alone
It
in
makes you
this.
feel so much better.
Exactly, exactly. And in the end, if we it probably sounds like a bit like woo woo, but like what if we did see each other as sisters? What if we just dropped some labels of like a friend or this or whatever and like understood that we're actually all living in the same place. We're all living on Earth and we're actually all neighbors and we're actually all in community and we're actually all connected and that every woman on this earth has the potential to like be a sister. And I think when I found more women who thought that way, I was like, this is so epic. This is so epic. And also the concept of like, I think from a young age, we're like taught to like have a best friend, and like
Mm.
you and this chick are like best friends and you're inseparable and it's the one person that can blah, blah, blah. Like there is limitless potential for like every woman on this earth to potentially be that. And I know we all have like different cultural backgrounds and interests, so that like you're not going to be besties with every. But I think if we stripped away the descriptions of people and the personality and the ego and we looked, at soul, I think that there's something really beautiful and powerful when women come together. And I've just seen that over and over again with whether it be in-person retreats or whether it be online circles, is that a lot of women in their 30s, 40s, 50s have never experienced a safe community of women. And some of their most complicated relationships are with the woman closest in their life, their sisters, their mothers, their aunts, or their
Mm.
caretakers, or even their friends who now, for them, some woman at the age of like, let's say, like 55 or whatever, is going through her a bit of like an awakening journey and now finding that there's disconnect from women from earlier on in her life. And so to find these communities where everyone's just like doing the work and we're all imperfect in it and we all cry together and we laugh together and we look at the light stuff and we look at the heavy stuff. And I just think it's like we are not alone on this planet. And even though the healing journey can be like an individual experience, there is more healing when it's done in a collective.
I've experienced the exact same thing, and I think as I got older, I realized how much more open I am to feminine energy, whereas when I was younger, I couldn't handle it. And I always thought, oh, it's everyone else. But once I sort of started doing work on myself, everything changed. My perspective changed, my understanding, my empathy, and all of a sudden, I'm like on the other out of that,
Yeah,
really.
yeah,
It's a
yeah.
very powerful thing.
It really is. And I think to not only witness other women, but to like to be witnessed yourself is one of the most healing things that we can do for ourselves.
Very. I wanted to unpack the pillars that you offer. There's quite a few. I think there's 6 or so. So can we start with yoga? So how does it assist with achieving wellness? Although it might seem obvious to people that practice, I think just for those people that don't. And what are the benefits sort of short term and long term for yoga?
Yeah, so I mean, when we talk about yoga in the Western world a lot, when we talk about yoga, people obviously go yoga mat, and that's yoga. So yoga is actually much more than just our physical practice on the mat. And our physical practice on the mat is actually called asana. And asana actually means seat. And so the purpose of a physical practice is pretty much to find as much balance and harmony and health in the physical body, whether it be the structural aspects, more like the bones and the muscular skeletal systems, or whether it's our internal systems, our respiratory, our lymphatic, our digestive, whatever it is, to get the physical body to a place that you would be able to sit for long enough to be able to go into a meditative state without the body becoming a distraction. So when we think about it in that way, ultimately our physical practice of yoga asana on the mat is to find, again, holistic health within the body. So that is looking to help and balance the body and bring it back into its state of homeostasis. And so for a lot of us, the journey of yoga, whether you end up diving deeper into the philosophy or the teachings or the pranayama or the meditation, for most people in the Western world, it starts with a very physical practice. Probably in like a heated yoga room somewhere. You're like, I'm going to try this yoga thing. And there's something about it that the moment you do that, I think a part of our body, our DNA, our cells recognizes like the very ancient medicine that is in it. And so there are many different styles of yoga, and I find this quite often that I'll speak to someone, I'll say, oh, have you practiced yoga asana before? And they'll say, yes, I hated it, like this is what the teacher did, or like did it, and I'll be like, oh, like what kind of yoga was it? And they'll be like, oh, I don't know, I thought all yoga is yoga. And so I think that, that's a good place to start for anyone who, especially those who are listening to this, who don't understand what it's about, is and I use the comparative quite a lot, that if you're going to buy a car, you're not going to go to the first car that's for sale and just buy it. You're going to look at 10 different cars, and then you're going to drive them, and then you're going to look at their history, etc., right? We get the point. So with yoga, I think that it's important to find the right teacher. I think it's important to find the right style of practice. I think it's important to find the right environment to be in. That's going to be different for all of us. But really, it is a practice of finding safety and of observation and exploration. Most of us are not taught about the different systems. Most of us are not, even though it's actually so obvious, when someone is stressed, I'd say you're in a stressed state, and then the first thing that someone will say to you is, whoa, 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 stop, take a deep breath. Just, whoa, take a deep breath. And that is like the crux of this practice, is that the physical practice of asana becomes that deep breath for your nervous system, for all your other internal systems. And yes, we can play, so we can look at making the body stronger and getting our balance better and doing arm balances or handstands or headstands and all those kinds of things. But ultimately, we're wanting to be able to touch our toes so that when our keys drop on the floor, we can bend down and pick up our keys. Or we want to be able to have mobility in the spine and the neck, so that when you're driving and you need to turn your head and look at your blind spot, that you don't end up with like a seized up neck. It's taking yoga off the mat that really is where it becomes very beneficial. And then I think, last point would be that yoga really is for everybody. It is not gymnastics. It is not performative. It is a practice of healing. And so if you find yourself in a space where you do not feel safe, where you do not feel supported, where you feel like there's a comparison in the class, it might not be the right space for you to explore the practice. Because if your nervous system is in stressed mode when you're going to yoga, then that's not yoga. That really isn't yoga.
Defeating the purpose, really. Okay, so the next pillar is meditation. So how does it assist with achieving wellness, and what are the benefits?
Okay, so meditation. So the Dalai Lama said that if we could teach every 7-year-old in the world to meditate, we would eliminate violence from the world in 1 generation. And that statement is so powerful, because it's like, oh, if we could just do that. But it is one of the hardest practices to do. It is one of the hardest things to do for humans. That's why there are so many people who don't meditate, or there are so many people who struggle to meditate, or there are people who've been meditating for years who still struggle with it. Otherwise, we'd all probably be walking around like, little enlightened beings everywhere. But it's the practice of presence. It's the practice of becoming the observer of your inner world. It is starting to rewire the brain so that we move from being reactive more to being responsive, to ourselves and to our environment, to be able to find more clarity. Traditionally, and the practice of meditation is you sit and you close your eyes. And so again, for a lot of people, even just like trying to sit cross-legged on the floor is going to be super uncomfortable. You're going to sit there for like 3 or 4 minutes and your back is going to start to hurt. Then it is going to distract you. What I recommend, especially if you're starting off with meditation, is to start with some things that are guided. Even a guided breathwork practice can lead you into more of a meditative state. Visualizations, yoga nidra, all of these kinds of things. You can do it sitting in a chair, you can do it lying on your bed. You don't have to be in a lotus pose on the ground to be able to meditate. That is not a prerequisite. The prerequisite for meditation is presence. And so whatever you need to do with your body to find the most comfortable position to be able to do that is what you should be doing. And really, our minds are always working, right? That's what they're meant to do. But in the world we live in, with all the stimulation we have, it goes in overdrive and we can live like very up in the mind. And so what happens is we start to create the neural pathways that then become like quite deeply ingrained. We're thinking about the same things, we're ruminating, and every time we do that, we strengthen that neural pathway. So whether it is a thought, whether it is a belief, whatever it is, gets stronger and stronger. When we move into our meditation practice, we're taking the attention and the focus and the energy away from those neural pathways. So we're not only then not strengthening them anymore, we can change direction and we create space. So, there's that quite a famous saying, I'm not sure who it's by, but it basically said, you can't think your way out of anxiety. It's what got you there in the first place. And so with meditation, a lot of people think that meditating means that you're not thinking. I would love to honestly meet someone who doesn't think at all when they're meditating. There are very few people in this practice who've reached an actual state of meditation. And so the thoughts will be there. The work is, again, the presence, becoming the observer. And can you allow those thoughts, emotions, memories, feelings, sensations to come, to go, and to keep bringing yourself back to an anchor point. And it can be very, very difficult, but I know that for me, so many of my biggest ideas or downloads or moments of clarity or understandings of myself or someone else, or that thing that you've been wondering, what do I need to do? How do I change this? Or how do I navigate this? It doesn't come from thinking. It comes from slowing down, creating enough spaciousness for something bigger to speak through you.
Wow, that's amazing. You need that stillness for the clarity to come through. Wow. Okay, the next one is breath work. So again, how does it assist with achieving wellness, and what are the benefits? There's so many.
So many. So many. I guess the main thing would be, similar to what I mentioned earlier with the interaction response with our internal systems and our physical body, and then our emotional and our mental and our energetic body. And the breath really is a gateway for change. So the moment we change our internal environment, so the moment we are stressed or in shock or whatever it is, you will automatically feel your breath is faster, your heart beats faster. It needs to get more oxygen to the parts of your body that needs to, again in air quotes, save you from the lion, right? So you're in your fight, flight, freeze states. When we're in fight, flight, and freeze, our body is not digesting, because that's not going to save you from the lion. It's not healing. It's not going to save you from the lion. It's not helping you to process emotions. That's not going to help you to save you from the lion. So all these processes that are really crucial for our immunity, our hormonal balance, for our overall wellness, are not being seen to, because they're not going to help us in our immediate stressed situation, which these days now is the email that you haven't sent, and it's the traffic that you're driving in, and it's the kids' homework that wasn't done, and it's the bill you need to pay, etc. So unless we can change a lot of our external environments, right, which I think a lot of people would love, I guess in a way fortunate to have moved into the middle of nowhere. There's no traffic, there's very little noise pollution, light pollution. I always say, like, unless you move out and become a monk, like in the mountains, you're gonna have to
Yeah.
live with the real things that are in your environment. So bringing these very ancient practices into a very modern living experience. And one of the ways that we can do that is through our breath. So as much
Yeah.
as the emotional, the mental state impacts the breath in the breath in the body can impact the mental and emotional state as well. So we're wanting to activate the parasympathetic nervous system. That is the opposite of the sympathetic, or they kind of work together and we need them both. Like we need our sympathetic, we need that sympathetic to kick in if there's a car and we need to jump out of the road or, whatever it is, we need them both. So to not, what's the word? To not like frame either as like negative or positive, because they're both parts of our system and we need them both. But ultimately, if we're wanting to heal, if we're wanting to digest, if we're wanting to take in our nutrition, if we're wanting to feel calmer, if we're wanting to be able to respond to things instead of react to things,
Yeah.
we have to calm the nervous system, and we can do that by slowing the breath. So various techniques, whether it's breath retention practices where you're holding the breath, whether it is bringing in sound, something like Brahmari pranayama where you're humming and the humming is literally affecting the nerves in the body that activate parasympathetic nervous system, whether it's just getting the breath to really move in as a deep belly breath, right, moving that diaphragm up and down in the body. There's, like, as you said, there's so many different techniques of breath work these days. It's like it's quite a trend to do breath work as well. But what I would also say is, like anything that we do, practice is a practice for a reason. And if you're new to it, treat it with respect. I think a lot of people jump into these practices and they think it's going to be a quick fix, and they think it's going to give them an epiphany, and they think it's going to change their life. And it could very well do that. There are, breathwork techniques and things out there that take people on, literal Kundalini awakenings or journeys or, whatever it is. But your system isn't necessarily able to handle that or to hold that for you. So my advice is always, and you'll see this in every pranayama or any pranayama teacher who's teaching, or yoga teacher who's teaching this from almost the olden days, in his is start slow, start simple, and
Yes.
build up any repetition that you're going to be repeating. Notice what your body feels like. It's not about force, it's about flow.
Lastly, the last pillar is mindfulness. So again, how does this fit into achieving wellness, and what are the benefits of being mindful?
Yeah, I think it fits in with almost, a lot of what I've said already. Mindfulness really is the ability to pay attention, to be present in what you're doing, and to notice the small things. I think very often we look at like the weekend, right? Or the holiday or the whatever it is to be our moment to live. And we're like, I'm gonna hustle the next like 3 weeks because then I'm going on holiday for 4 days or whatever it is. And if you look at the percentage of time that you are wasting by waiting to live to get to the
Exactly.
next thing, it is a lot of time. It is for most people from the moment they wake up on a Monday morning at 6 a.m., get home at 7 p.m., Monday through to Friday. It's like 70% of your week that you are going, I'm going to be happy tonight when I get home. I'm going to be happy this weekend when I'm off. And, unfortunately, we all need a job and we all need to work and we all need to make money, and it's not always pleasurable, and we don't always find ourselves in, positions that we want to be in. But I think that if we can be more mindful to the smaller things in life, that shift starts to become like working almost like compound interest. When you're doing these small daily things, like when you're up in the morning, are you on your phone first thing in the day? That's one of the most common mindfulness like switches that a person can do for themselves is no phone an hour before or an hour after waking up, no phone an hour before you go to sleep. And then people are like, well, what am I supposed to do with myself? That's a question, right? Things like when I get in my car to drive, I take 10 sometimes 15 minutes in my car before I turn my car on. I like pack all my little things in my car. I get like my snacks ready. I get like my podcast on. I'm like, everything is perfect in my car. I share my location with whoever I need to. Have a sip of water. I close my eyes. I take a few breaths. If I'm leaving my home, I'll say like a little prayer to my home, and I'll say bye. I love you. Thank you. You know, be
I
safe.
love that.
Like I do like a whole ritual, and then I go, okay, I envision myself on this road and how I'm going to be driving. I'm in my golden bubble always. And so my driving is like one of my favorite things to do. Like every time I get in my car, I'm like, ooh, it's like me time, or it's podcast time, or it's like it's a time to pause, you know, things like waiting in a bank queue. You know, it's one of my favorite things because I'm there to get something done. I'm doing it, and there's nowhere else I can be in that moment in time. You know, I just have to be there. And so what do I do with myself for that time? Because am I going to sit there and like be angry for 20 minutes or half an hour, which is going to roll into the rest of my day, which is going to roll into my relationships, which is going to roll into my actual like internal quality? Or am I going to find a level of acceptance and be mindful of what is happening and the triggers that are being brought up?
I need to remember this when I go to home affairs.
Yes. Home affairs is the best. I'm like, I pack in my books, I pack in my snacks. I'm like, I'm gonna catch up on all the reading I needed to do, that one like book or that
Yeah,
one article that I wanted to read. Oh, I get to do it now.
it's an opportunity to be with yourself and just do whatever you want to do. Actually, whatever you can do, read, catch up,
Yeah, I
just
think,
be.
you know, so many people, you know, are like, oh, you know, I wish I had more time for myself. And I
It's
think,
an opportunity.
you know, there's a difference between I wish I had more time to do this particular thing that I wanted to do.
Mm.
It's different to like, I wish I had more time for myself, because I think, and this is, you know, this is someone speaking who's not a mother, for instance. Like, I'm not like raising like three kids running around. So I totally respect that, you know, it's very different for everyone, and that, you know, sometimes time can really feel like a luxury. But
Yeah.
I do believe that there are things that we are doing unconsciously in our days that if we were more mindful about it, it might actually be the tiny little gems and gifts throughout our day that could actually give us
Yes.
what we need.
And I think that comes through mindfulness, because if you're mindful and aware, you start seeing where you can fit that in and change the perspective on each moment. Okay, perfect. Let's chat about exercise, movement, and the effect it has on mental health.
Beautiful, beautiful. So, yeah, I mean, how I like to think about it is that we have outputs and we have inputs. So this has a lot to do with rest as well. So there are like the seven kinds of rest, out of which one is physical rest, which can be both active and passive. So movement, for me, movement really is about the intention behind it. To me, I like to see everything as medicine. But again, I'm not an athlete. I'm not a dancer. I'm not a performer on stage. I don't need my body to be able to necessarily do extreme things for me to live out my dream or what I believe to be my purpose or whatever it is. Obviously, I teach yoga asana on the mat, so if I broke my knee tomorrow, I would have a bit of a problem, but I feel like I could work around it. But that being said, I think it's important for us to find the balance in how we're moving our bodies. So there's also a very big difference for women and men. So men, you know, really work on the circadian rhythm, where they're like, they can get up at like 6 a.m., do their workout, do their sleep, wake up at 6 a.m., do their workout. Men work really well in a 24-hour cycle. It's like they build on that, they like thrive on that, and they really grow on that. With women, it's very different. So whether you're menstruating, whether you're perimenopause, whether you're menopausal, whether you're postmenopausal, we're on different cycles, which means we have different hormones moving through our body. There's a lot of science obviously being done on this now. There's a lot of science to back when would the right time be to do the right type of exercise. And I think that's amazing, and I love information. I'm such a nerd. Yet, and I don't think we can use the reproductive hormonal cycle as the be all and end all of how we should be. You know, it's again looking for an answer to tell you what to do. And so, for instance, if I'm in my like follicular phase, right? And I'm supposed to be like, this is my energy week. It's the week I need to do my like long runs and blah, blah, blah. But like yesterday, my dog got really hurt and my geyser exploded and I didn't sleep and I had a really stressful thing at work and I'm actually just exhausted. What do I honor then? Do I honor the fact that my menstrual app says this is the week to do your really tough workouts? Or do I go, how do I feel? And so I think when it comes to exercise, especially for women, like it's all about intuition. It's all about your intuitive knowing, about sensing, feeling, and then radical honesty. Because we're really good, I don't know if I'm allowed to swear on here. We're really good at BSing ourselves, right? Like we're so good at
Very
living in,
good.
very good at living in denial. And some of it is a protective mechanism. And also, you know, in this day and age, to be very careful at how we look at ourselves in the sense around calling ourselves lazy or using like, oh, I'm lazy or I'm procrastinating or whatever. Procrastinating could actually simply be that you're in a freeze mode in your nervous system. And so you're already in a freeze mode in your nervous system because you're running on very low capacity. But now your brain, who's been told that this is workout week, is now shouting at that system going, you're lazy, you need to be working out now. And then you're feeling worse and worse, and it's just like a downward spiral. So I think if we can bring more, like the previous practices we spoke about, if you can bring in your mindfulness, notice what your breath is doing, notice how your body feels, let that inform what it is you're needing to be doing. And this is coming from someone who I can like really say I'm a self-proclaimed lazy girl. I love the slow practices, I love yin, I love restorative, I love a little swim. For me to like get and like do like a HIIT workout or whatever, like it takes a lot from me, which sometimes I need. Sometimes I need that fire, but it's because I've decided I need the fire.
Yes.
Not because I'm reading information that is now just being told and like Monday to Sunday, that's what I follow. So I hope that answered the question.
It does. It does. It makes sense. It's actually very sort of practical.
Yeah, and sorry, so just the last little bit is, I guess, you know, what are the benefits of moving your body? You know, is like when we move, the less we do, the less we do, right? The less we move, the less we move. And we are energetic beings. We're made up of energy. We've got energy running through our nervous system. We've got the liquids, the blood, the lymph running through our body. The body requires movement and energy to be able to work. If you are sitting with gravity pulling down on all your organs in the same position every day for hours and hours and hours, any human can logically understand that that is not going to be healthy. If we were not meant to be able to stretch up and touch the sky, our arms wouldn't do that. If we weren't meant to bend our hips, bend our knees, and bend our ankles, we wouldn't be able to do that. And so I think it's like exploring what your body can do is what it needs to be doing. It's been created in perfection in that way. And I really that if you go out for a walk in the sun and you come back, that you're going to feel worse. I really doubt that if you go for a beautiful swim in whether you like warm water or cold water and you come back, that you're going to feel worse. You're not. So besides the happy hormones that we get, right? We get endorphins from exercising. That's why you can like do a workout, and after your workout, you're like so pumped up and like life's amazing. Like I can do anything. And like, that's really great, temporary. And ultimately the medicine that you're doing is, you know, we speak in yoga a lot about preventative medicine. What I'm doing now is for myself when I'm 60, when I'm 70, when I'm 80, taking care of my joints now, taking care of my cardiovascular system now, taking care of my skin now, taking care of myself now, so that when I do get to the age where we start rapidly declining in cellular healing, like when you get older and older and older, your cells stop healing. When we get to that point, that you don't have to sit with 20 years of chronic pain or illness, hopefully.
Exactly. I love how you focus on connecting to self and source. Can we unpack that a bit and explain the importance? We did touch on this briefly.
This, I guess, is a trickier one because it's really up to the individual.
Yes.
And I've been speaking to a lot of friends around this as well, where your connection to a higher power is going to be very different from others. I think we can come together in some form of unified way, but I also feel like the way and the language that is used around some of my friends is very different to the language that's used with other friends. And so there, for me, is like a mutual respect and understanding that what source is to me is, or what God is to me, is very different to someone else.
Yes.
And so I guess, for me it's a knowing. I think my one of my big gateways through to that understanding, that very deep inner knowing, has been through the connection with nature, where you're feeling and you're understanding that we are never in nature. Like, we are nature. We are as part of
Yes.
this earth, as the trees, as the sky, as the wind, as the birds, as the bees. And when you look around at the beauty that is everywhere, where, humans think they're so clever, and like, we were walking around, me and my two friends were walking around my garden the other day, just like looking at all the plants and things, and like we found this little leaf, this plant. It's called a skaapwerkie because it's like literally like a little sheep's ear,
Yeah.
and it's so soft. It feels exactly like a sheep's ear, and I was just like, oh my word, I want to make a jacket out of like these leaves. And being like, humans think they're so clever, but when we look at what's being created in a synthetic way, it's all basically based on the intelligence of nature in the end. And
And the
so for me,
perfection.
yeah, and so for me, it's just like, there has to be something bigger, in all of this. And I think that that's beautiful, knowing that if there is, and there's, we can go into so much of this, if we bring in reincarnation, or we bring in whatever it is, just even within like the wellness world that I look at, where people are like, oh, they follow the yoga lineage, which maybe has a lot to do with like Hinduism, or going into Taoism, or maybe it's Chinese medicine, or maybe it's whatever it is. There's so many, and in the end, it's really up to the individual to feel into what is their truth. And I think for me, there's like a knowing that I'm never alone. And even though I have free will, there is always a bigger picture and a bigger plan. And sometimes this little brain of mine that I think is so clever actually has no idea what's best for me. And that it's like a saying where it says, if it doesn't work out, it's probably what's best for you. And so, yeah, I think, without going too much further into this topic, that's, yeah, pretty much that.
It's beautiful. Okay, perfect. So we've come to the end. I just wanted to ask you two more things. Are there any upcoming events? I know you did mention, I think it was a workshop. So if you can tell us about those, and also your contact details. If someone wants to reach out to you, how do they do that?
Awesome, thanks. Yes, so I currently have 2 spots open for my one-on-one mentorship, one-on-one container at the moment. I have taken on a lot of clients in the past and have had to like bring my own boundaries into place of how many women I'm working with at the same time. But I do have 2 spots open for that at the moment, which is initially a 3-month program of working together. Then we have a monthly new moon women's circle. So that is every month, as close as we can get it onto the actual night of the new moon. And I teach a live Zoom class on a Monday night and a Wednesday morning every week. That is on the Aligned Living membership. So that information, you can find all of that on the website, which is alignedliving.co.za. If you want to send an email, it's info@alignedliving.co.za. And then my Instagram is Align with Kathleen, and that's where I hang out mostly. So if you wanted to chat to me, my Instagram is probably the best place to get in contact with me. Yeah, and then we have 1 spot left for the 4-day Women's Silent Retreat in November, which is held at Bodhikaya. Beautiful, beautiful space just outside Gansbaai. And then we will be launching the retreat dates for 2026 in the next month or 2.
It sounds amazing. Thank you so much for joining us today. We've had such an insightful time with you.
Thank you so much for having me. It's, yeah, honestly my pleasure. And yeah, I think if I had to kind of say any last little thing, it's just that I think if women could be a little kinder to themselves and give themselves a little bit of slack, that's just super important, is, you know, to move from a place of love and to also know that you are not alone and you are never ever alone. Yeah, my inbox is always open. There's no such thing as a stupid question. I love to chat, I love to connect. And so if you are struggling with your mental health, if you're struggling with stress, if you're, you know, whatever it is, if you're feeling overwhelmed, if you're feeling like you're not sure how to shift something, yeah, get in touch, and perhaps there's a way that I could support.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Kathleen.